Have you ever opened a Bible and stumbled across a grocery list? Not a parable, not a commandment about behavior, an actual list of 7 specific foods written thousands of years ago that God told the Israelites to eat in the Promised Land. What if I told you that modern nutritionists, cardiologists, and agricultural scientists have spent decades studying the exact same 7 foods, and they keep arriving at the same astonishing conclusion, that a civilization without food chemistry labs, without macronutrient tracking, without a single supplement bottle, somehow identified the most complete, protective, life-sustaining foods on Earth? Deuteronomy 8:8 reads, "A land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey." 7 foods, 1 verse, and the deeper scientists dig into each one, the more they find themselves circling back to the same word: extraordinary. Today, at Grow with Ease, we're uncovering the 7 sacred foods of the biblical land of Israel and revealing why modern nutritional science is only now catching up to what ancient farmers already knew. Some of these foods prevented the very diseases that are killing people today. Others contain compounds that pharmaceutical companies are actively trying to synthesize. A few haven't changed since the Bronze Age, and that may be exactly why they're so powerful. Stick around, because item number 6 is the one that nutritionists call the most perfect food ever identified, and it grows on a tree you can plant in a pot on your back porch. Number 1. Wheat, the ancient grain they replaced with something worse. Picture a Bronze Age hillside in the Fertile Crescent. The air smells like dry earth and harvest. Farmers with leather-worn hands are cutting stalks of ancient wheat, not the dwarf hybrid wheat piled into today's bread bags, but tall, golden, wild ancestor grain with root systems that stretched deep into mineral-rich soil. This was einkorn. This was emmer. This was the wheat that built civilizations. Modern wheat and ancient wheat share a name and almost nothing else. Today's commercial wheat has been bred for yield, for short stalks that won't fall over in wind, for fast processing. What we gained in convenience, we surrendered in nutrition. Ancient wheat varieties had 30% more protein, higher lutein for eye health, and a genetic simplicity, just 14 chromosomes compared to modern wheat's 42, that made them far more digestible and significantly less inflammatory for the human gut. Here's what nutritionists are increasingly shocked by. Population studies from regions still eating ancient grain varieties show dramatically lower rates of gluten sensitivity, celiac disease, and metabolic syndrome. The problem may never have been wheat. It may have been what we did to wheat. If you want to grow something truly ancient, look for einkorn wheat seed from heritage suppliers. It grows easily in raised beds, tolerates poor soil, and matures in about 120 days. Harvest when the stalks turn golden and the grain separates easily from the hull. Ground fresh, it makes bread with a nutty complexity that modern flour simply cannot replicate. Number 2. Barley, the grain that beats prescription cholesterol medication. From the humble wheat fields, we move to something even older, a grain so ancient it was found in Egyptian tombs and so nutritionally powerful that a landmark clinical study published in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association made pharmaceutical companies quietly uncomfortable. Barley was the food of Roman gladiators. They were literally called hordearii, barley men, because their trainers fed them barley for endurance, muscle recovery, and stamina that grain-fed rivals couldn't match. In medieval Europe, barley porridge was prescribed by physicians for everything from fever to digestive illness, and for good reason. The science behind barley's power is a soluble fiber called beta-glucan. When you consume it, beta-glucan forms a thick gel in your digestive tract that physically traps cholesterol and carries it out of your body before it can be absorbed.
Multiple clinical trials have confirmed that regular barley consumption lowers LDL cholesterol by up to 10%, comparable to some pharmaceutical interventions with zero side effects and zero prescription cost. Barley is one of the easiest grains to grow in a home garden. Direct sow seeds in early spring, it tolerates frost and actually prefers cool weather. Space seeds 2 to 3 inches apart in rows, keep the soil moist, and harvest when the seed heads droop and the grain feels firm. A 10-foot row produces enough for weeks of porridge, soups, or barley bread. It has been feeding humans for 17,000 years. It doesn't need improvement. Number 3. Grapes. The fruit that contains a molecule scientists have been chasing for decades. Where barley worked quietly in the gut, the vine worked differently, in the blood, in the heart, in the very walls of your arteries. And the scientific community has spent the better part of 40 years trying to bottle what this ancient fruit gives away freely. In the warm valleys of ancient Canaan, grapevines trained along stone walls produced fruit that Israelite families ate fresh, dried into raisins, pressed into vinegar, and fermented into wine for celebration and preservation alike. Every part of the grape, skin, seed, pulp, was used. Nothing was discarded. And this total use, as we now understand, delivered something remarkable. The molecule is resveratrol. Found concentrated in grape skins, it's an antioxidant that activates longevity genes called sirtuins, the same cellular pathways that caloric restriction research has linked to extended lifespan and reduced inflammation. Scientists studying the so-called French paradox, the observation that populations eating high-fat diets but abundant grapes and wine had dramatically lower rates of heart disease, eventually traced a significant part of the effect back to resveratrol. Supplement companies now sell it in capsule form for $20 to $40 a bottle. The ancient Israelites ate it off the vine. Grapes are one of the most rewarding garden fruits you can grow. Plant a bare root vine in full sun against a south-facing fence or trellis in spring. Most varieties thrive in zones 5 through 9. They're slow to establish patience through the first 2 seasons, but by year 3, a single established vine can produce 15 to 20 pounds of fruit, and it will feed your family for decades.
Number 4. Figs, the tree that grows medicine in its leaves and fruit both. From the vine, we move to the tree, ancient, wide-branched, deeply shading. Figs appear more often in the Bible than almost any other plant. Prophets rested under them, warriors were promised them as a symbol of peace and abundance. And in the quiet courtyards of Jerusalem households, fig trees were not ornamental, they were pharmacy and pantry combined. What made figs irreplaceable in the ancient diet was something no other readily available food provided in the same form: extraordinary prebiotic fiber combined with natural sugars that released slowly rather than spiking the blood. Dried figs sustained Israelite soldiers on desert marches. Fresh figs were used poulticed on wounds and infections, a practice that drew skepticism for centuries until researchers identified compounds in fig latex with genuine antibacterial and antifungal properties. Modern nutritional analysis consistently ranks figs among the most mineral-dense fruits available. A single serving delivers more calcium than most dairy products, significant potassium, magnesium, and copper, and a fiber content that feeds beneficial gut bacteria in ways that nutritionists now associate with reduced colon cancer risk and better immune regulation. The wild irony? Figs are one of the easiest fruit trees to grow in home gardens and containers. Most varieties thrive in zones 7 through 11, and in colder climates, container-grown figs can winter indoors. Plant in full sun, water deeply through the first season, and expect your first real harvest by year 2. A mature fig tree asks almost nothing and delivers fruit for generations. Number 5. Pomegranates, the fruit cardiologists wish more patients would eat.
Few fruits in history have carried the weight of symbolism the way the pomegranate has. Embroidered on priestly robes, carved on temple pillars, pressed into sacred seals. But behind the iconography was a nutritional reality that a cardiologist reviewing the research in 2025 would find genuinely startling. Pomegranates have been cultivated across the Middle East and Mediterranean for at least 4,000 years. In ancient Israel, the fruit was associated with abundance and blessing. A single pomegranate contains hundreds of individual seeds, each encased in jewel-bright juice. Persian physicians prescribed pomegranate juice for fever, joint pain, and heart complaints with a consistency that modern clinical researchers are now validating in ways they didn't expect. The active compounds are called punicalagins, unique antioxidants found almost exclusively in pomegranates that the body converts to urolithins, substances that reduce arterial inflammation, lower blood pressure, and inhibit the oxidation of LDL cholesterol, the precise process that causes arterial plaque. A study published in Clinical Nutrition found that daily pomegranate juice consumption reduced carotid artery thickness, a direct marker of cardiovascular disease risk, by up to 30% over 3 years. There is currently no pharmaceutical drug that achieves the same result with 0 side effects. Pomegranate trees are far more garden-friendly than most people realize. Hardy to Zone 7, and with cold-tolerant varieties surviving Zone 6 with protection, they thrive in full sun and tolerate drought once established. Plant in spring, water deeply through the first season, and expect your first real harvest by year 2. A mature pomegranate tree can produce 200 pounds of fruit in a good season, tart, brilliant, and alive with compounds that scientists are still working to fully understand. Number 6. Olives, the most perfect food ever identified. Here is the one nutritionists keep returning to, the one that sits at the center of every longevity study, every blue zone analysis, every anti-inflammatory dietary protocol, the olive. In ancient Israel, olive oil was not a condiment. It was currency, medicine, fuel for lamps, anointing oil for kings and priests, and the single most calorie-dense food available in a landscape where calories could be scarce. Entire economies were built around the olive harvest. Ancient presses carved into limestone are still standing in the Galilee hills. What makes olive oil nutritionally extraordinary is the combination of monounsaturated fat, primarily oleic acid, with polyphenols, particularly oleocanthal, which inhibits the same inflammatory enzyme pathway as ibuprofen. Harvard's decades-long Nurses' Health Study and the landmark Predimed trial both identified high olive oil consumption as one of the strongest dietary predictors of reduced cardiovascular disease, reduced all-cause mortality, and protection against neurodegenerative disease. Olive trees are remarkably growable outside the Mediterranean. Dwarf varieties thrive in containers anywhere with full sun and frost-free winters. In zones 8 through 11, standard olive trees planted in well-drained soil require almost no care once established and live for thousands of years. There are olive trees still producing fruit in the Garden of Gethsemane that were standing when Jesus walked there. Plant one this season, and you are planting something that may outlive everyone you know. Number 7. Honey, dates. The ancient sweetener that feeds your brain and your microbiome. The 7th sacred food closes the list with sweetness, but this is not the empty sweetness of refined sugar. Biblical scholars have long debated whether the honey of Deuteronomy 8:8 refers to wild bee honey or the thick, dark syrup pressed from medjool dates, which ancient Israelites called divash. The answer, most likely, is both. Date honey, pressed date syrup, was the sweetener of the ancient world. Rich, dark, complex in flavor, it was used in cooking, preservation, medicine, and as a trade commodity. And modern biochemical analysis has revealed something remarkable about both substances. They behave in the body in a way that refined sugars simply do not. Raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide precursors, propolis compounds, and prebiotic oligosaccharides that feed beneficial gut bacteria while inhibiting pathogens, a combination that researchers at the University of Oxford described as a complete antimicrobial and probiotic system in a single food. Date syrup delivers natural fructose bundled with soluble fiber, magnesium, and B vitamins that slow absorption and prevent the blood sugar spikes that pure refined sugar generates. Date palms grow productively in zones 9 through 11 and in containers in cooler climates. For those in temperate zones, honey is the accessible miracle. A single productive hive, managed by even a beginner beekeeper, can produce 40 to 60 pounds of raw honey per year, and the bees that produce it will pollinate every fruit tree, vegetable, and flower in your garden as a bonus. 7 foods, 1 ancient verse, and an unbroken line from Bronze Age hillside farms to the most sophisticated nutritional research laboratories in the world, pointing in the same direction. What the Israelites understood intuitively through observation and inheritance and faith, modern science keeps confirming with controlled trials and molecular analysis. The most protective foods are not exotic, expensive, or complicated. They grow from the ground, from ancient seed, with sunlight and patience and soil. They always have. Which of these 7 sacred foods surprised you most? Have you grown any of them in your own garden, or is there one you're now planning to try? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. If this changed how you see an ancient text and your own backyard at the same time, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that the most powerful nutrition on earth has been growing in the same soil for thousands of years. Grow with Ease isn't just a channel, it's your journey to a simpler, more self-sufficient life. Subscribe and let's grow together.